Hello, I'm Avis Kalfsbeck, and this is the Peace is Here podcast. Welcome to Peacewarts, School of Peacecraft and Inquiry, where we practice the skills of peace through short daily classes. We take the peace work seriously, but not ourselves. If you're joining us mid-school year, you're not late. Orientation begins at episode 198. I'd be so grateful if you help me spread the peace messages by sharing this episode with a friend. Welcome back, Peace Scholars. We're in the Department of Living Roots in the garden. Today we aren't looking at the plants, we are looking at the links. In this department, we view a 2,000-mile supply chain, not just as a logistical feat, but as an invisible leash. Henry Kissinger, the former U.S. Secretary of State, notoriously remarked in 1970, "Control oil and you control nations. Control food and you control the people." The concept, the invisible leash. When a population is entirely dependent on a centralized industrial food system, they are materially primed to accept fear-based messaging. If a foreign threat is framed as a risk to your grocery store shelves, you're more likely to support a war to protect those shelves. But when a community begins to feed itself, the scarcity script loses its power. Local food is a form of information warfare because it proves that survival does not require a standing army. The history: broken monopolies and rural resistance. Our lesson today is about the historical proof that feeding ourselves breaks the cycle of dependency and inoculates us against the propaganda of conflict. To understand the danger of dependency, we look at the 1941 Great Famine in Athens. During the Axis occupation, when the military alliance of Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Bulgaria invaded the country, the centralized food distribution system was seized. Because the city had become entirely dependent on imports and state-controlled grain, over 300,000 people starved in a single winter. Contrast this with the rural mountain villages during the same period. Because they maintained fragmented food networks, small-scale, local, and diverse, they survived. While the city starved on empty grain silos, the mountain families survived on wild calories, greens, nuts, and small livestock, and traded through an informal barter peace that ignored the occupation's currency. The occupiers could not turn off the food because there was no central valve to grab. The food was as decentralized as the soil itself. Local food is not just a lifestyle, it is a decentralized defense system. By 1969, another powerful example emerged: the Black Panther Party's Free Breakfast for Children program. By 1970, they were feeding over 20,000 children in 45 centers. J. Edgar Hoover famously called this program the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. It was not a military threat, it was an information threat. When a community-led network provides the basic needs that the state claims only it can provide, the state's propaganda of inevitable dependency collapses. Did Hoover stop them? Through the FBI's COINTELPRO initiative, he raided breakfast sites and used psychological warfare to dismantle the party organization, but he could not stop the logic of the program. It was so effective that the U.S. government was eventually forced to expand its own federal school breakfast programs to compete. By feeding the people, the Black Panthers broke the psychological monopoly of the state. The thesis: the 1963 pivot in the vaccine of literacy. In the period we call the Great Disarmament, we see the 1963 Russian wheat deal. For the first time, the United States sold massive amounts of grain to its Cold War rival. While framed as a peace gesture, it exposed the fragility of centralized agriculture. When nations become net importers of food, their foreign policy is no longer their own. They must remain aligned with the supplier or face starvation. This is why local food literacy, knowing how to save a seed or maintain a community garden, is a vaccine against propaganda. If you can grow your own primary calories, you cannot be bullied by a grain embargo. Propaganda relies on the fear of the other taking your share. This leads to rationing, which is top-down and competitive. However, studies of CSA's community-supported agriculture show that during local crisis, these networks default to sharing because the consumer has become a co-producer. They have a relationship with the farmer and the soil. They understand that a harvest failure is not a market glitch. It is a shared biological event. This relationship shifts trust from abstract, manipulative systems to real people. It is nearly impossible to convince someone that their neighbor is a threat when they are both standing in the same mud, pulling the same weeds. Your homework. 1. Look up the history of the Black Panther free breakfast program and read why the FBI considered it a threat. 2. Write down one question about any of this episode's topics. If you don't have a question, just write no question. 3. Optional. Journal for 5 minutes about your trust map. Who do you trust more to feed you in a crisis? A distant government agency or a local network of growers you know by name? Why? The work of the worm. The worm does not read the news, does not know about global trade deficits or grain embargoes. It just keeps work in the local patch, making sure the roots have what they need to stay strong. In this landscape, every local link forged is a wire cut from the machinery of war, a quiet breaking of the leash that binds the abstract system to the table. Until our next class, keep your feet in the living roots. Class dismissed. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to support the Pieces Here podcast, the most helpful way is to follow it wherever you're listening. It helps share the message with others. You can also support this piecework at my Patreon for $4 a month, about what a used paperback goes for these days. Just go to Patreon at patreon.com/Avis Kalfsbeck. That's AVISKALFSBEEK. My most recent book is Mana Mutante, a best friend eco-fiction novella about food systems, featuring Tilly, Camas, Pedro, and the rest of the gang. It's book 6 in the Pedro the Water Dog Saves the Planet series and is available wherever you buy books. You can find all of my peace projects and stay in touch at aviskalfsbeck.com. Music is by Javier Peque Rodriguez. Sound effects are from Pixabay. Regarding peace, we need not delay or despair. We are not late. We are right on time to love. We are all scholars of peace. Listen for the peace.